A few years ago, I attended a public event at SF MoMA for Olafur Eliasson. I don't know if any of you were there, but it had a huge impact on me. I went to go hear Olafur Eliasson speak, and instead, I heard a neurobiologist, a snowflake scientist, and TJ Clark, who's an art historian. And I don't even remember if Olafur spoke that night. It was amazing. It was the most amazing night. And we've actually modeled our public programs off of that event ever since. We like at the Arts Commission to build a broader dialogue around the works that we show. Not just having the artists themselves present, but to present different ways of thinking about their work, different ways of thinking about contemporary art in general, and leaving you thinking as you. So tonight we have someone from the De Young, and we have a photographer who is not in the show, alongside one of our current exhibiting artists. If you like this program, you'll like other things that we do in terms of our public program. We're going to start with our exhibiting artists. Berndnaut Smilde, who is in the blue shirt over here, lives and works in Amsterdam. He received his BA in 2001 from the Minerva Academy and his MA in 2005 from the Frank Moore Institute, both in Holland. He has exhibited across Holland and also in Toronto, Taipei, Istanbul, Dublin, Paris, London, Rotterdam, many others, and now San Francisco. Last month, he opened his first large-scale solo exhibition in the US at Land of Tomorrow in Louisville, Kentucky. Additionally, his Nimbus work, which will be introduced to tonight, was recognized by Time magazine as one of the top 10 inventions of 2012. Berndnaut is represented by Roncchini Gallery in London. And now I'd like to have him come up and speak.
All right, so I'm Berndnaut. I'm based in Amsterdam, and I'm going to show you a few works. So, yeah, my work consists of installations, sculptures, and photos, and I often work corresponding to site and reacting on the architecture or history of the location. So that's why I wanted to start with this work. I'm interested in the moment of friction between construction and deconstruction, and this could be referring to the building, physical state of a building, as also to a moment of revelation that depicts hope of perishableness. But in these transitional situations, you're not really sure what you are looking at, and nor does it have a clear function yet, and therefore is open for interpretation. And that aspect I find really interesting. And as for in this work, board art, it's really the space that is important, because it's the location, the museum, that gives the context to this, changes the interpretation of this painting while it's resting against the wall for a brief abandoned moment. So I often work with situations that deal with duality, and they question inside and outside, and size, the function of materials, and architectural elements. And I find it interesting when a work functions in between reality and representation, that it will in the end not really function. And so this work is called Until Askeaton Has Street View. In 2009, I participated in a residency in Ireland. And when I looked for information, I was directed in Wisconsin. And so Askeaton, Ireland, is one of the oldest towns in Ireland. And well, around the 1840s, lots of Irish people immigrated to the US due to the potato famine. And a few people from Wisconsin set up a new town in Wisconsin, which they also named Askeaton. And if you look on Google Maps, you'll find a street view of Askeaton. And the first building you see is a barn, a typical red barn. And I found it interesting that, well, the original town hadn't been photographed by Google yet. And also this idea of when you're looking for some original, you find a duplicate. So I copied this barn and placed this facade or prop on the most resembling location in the original town of Ireland. The idea was that if, well, the Google photo car would come by, that this same image would be picked up and the barn would exist in both Askeatons. So it was up for 2 weeks, but I knew the car was in the neighborhood in Limerick City. So that was the idea. But recently I found out that after 2 years, it did. So now there is a Google Street View of a Skeeton with the same house. And I really like that idea of transition where you then take an image from the internet, put it in the real world, well, to be captured and then placed back online. So that really questions realities, and that's also what I'm interested in. So now we go to the cloud works, the Nimbus works. The Nimbus works, well, present a short moment of presence on a distinct location, and you could look at them as an omnious situation maybe, or just an element from a classical painting. What I'm really interested in the temporary aspect of the work. So it's just there for a few seconds and then it falls apart. So the work exists, the physical aspect is important, but the work exists in the end as a photograph. And this photograph functions, well, as a document of something that happened on a specific location. Also the space, well, functions basically as a plinth for the work. And with every space I try to keep a connection to an exhibition space. Also to keep a relation to the artwork, and also because, yeah, well, you could ask yourself if a sculpture could exist of just well-exposed air, basically. And so I'm not so much interested in the whole process of making the clouds, but rather in the idea of the image of a cloud inside a space. The first cloud I made in the small-scale space Probe, which is an exhibition space. It's a model space. The walls aren't higher than I think about, what is it, 3 foot? Yeah. So because it is a model space, it enables you to create works that are unthinkable in real life. Would it be possible to exhibit a rain cloud? And also because you have total control, you start making an ideal situation actually, and therefore I think that a model can also, well, stand for an idea. So what I did is I transformed the exhibition space into my ideal perception of a museum space, which was the National Gallery. And I really like that, well, the fleeting idea of the work, that it builds up and falls apart at the same time. So after that I started working in conventional size spaces. And so yeah, the locations are important for the work, and also, well, making the work in an exhibition space is also putting it in relation to art and to the history of that space. And also, like for instance, the one before in the museum space, you could say it's also related to painting in that way. You could think of it maybe as an escape element from a cloud, from a landscape painting in a physical form. And in this chapel also, well, it emphasizes the divine and fleeting connotations of the work. Well, yeah, but whether you see it as a threatening or defined situation, just by taking the cloud out of its natural context and presenting it in a space itself, provides the opportunity to project lots of ideas on it. All the spaces I use, the architecture is quite important, and I kind of, most of the time they are presented as ideal spaces. This was something totally different. In this exhibition I showed the work together with other works which were quite solid. So in this exhibition only the cloud exists in the form of the catalogue, and in the exhibition it is gone. Well, I make the clouds with combination of smoke, moist, and backlighting. And in every space, it works different. So this is more an industrial space. Also here, it's more like a weather situation than an archetypical cloud almost. But by on my research on how to make clouds, I run into this material. This is called aerogel, and aerogel is also called frozen smoke, and it consists of 99.8% air, and is the lightest solid material on Earth. NASA used it for collecting interstellar dust, and well, it's got a beautiful bluish shine, and you can like look right through it, and So what I did is I placed it on small models of exhibition spaces, and for me it resembles the same idea as the Nimbus works. Basically, they're just air on an empty space. But what I like about this as well is that it's an artificial material, and it's just a little bit more dense than air, and so these are outer space, and therefore it resembles also presents also the idea that that our human urge to compete with nature. And yeah, that's what I think is interesting about it. So other than that, I like materials, and I work a lot with construction materials and artificial elements, but also with scent. And this work, the conditioner works, they exist of a gallery of a ventilation shaft leading through the gallery. And what it does is it converts the air from the gallery into antiseptic air. And therefore the antiseptic air for me associates with, well, with hospitals and sickness, death maybe. But on the other hand, you know, this air is clean and safe on any bacterials. And therefore you start questioning the space as well. Is it safe here, or are you truly safe? What's the place trying to protect me from? So this work is also really about duality. This piece is called Unflattened, and I projected the color spectrum onto a landscape, making that idealistic landscape even more desirable. So the suggestion of a rainbow, well, it can be seen as a sign of promise or perfection, but by turning it upside down, you start questioning these values again. So again, that's changing. So this ideal, what at first looks like an ideal landscape can also, sunrise can also be interpreted as an apocalyptic image maybe. And this last image, well, really shows a detail of an almost kitsch aspect of it, which I quite like. So it's not that I'm really interested in nature, but it's more like the ungraspable aspect of nature that I find interesting, and all the meanings and ideas and myths people have created through them, through time. And I work with that. Well, that's it.